So dear students, in our previous lecture, we discussed carbohydrates, and we classified the carbohydrates into three groups: monosaccharides, second is oligosaccharides, and the third is polysaccharides. And you know this, we divided this into three categories: mono, oligo, and polysaccharides. Now today we'll start now with the monosaccharides. As I already told you, monosaccharides are made up of single sugar unit. They cannot be further hydrolyzed, and you can understand they cannot be further hydrolyzed. They are crystalline, colorless, and sweet substances and sweet steps, and they are called monosaccharides, and they cannot be further hydrolyzed into smaller units. And oligosaccharides, they are made up of 2 units, 3 units, or 4 units. So accordingly, we can have, they are called as a trisaccharides, tetrasaccharides, and trisaccharides, and accordingly we have disaccharides. So we have accordingly, di means they are made of 2 units. They are made up of 2 units, and trisaccharides are made up of 3 units, and tetrasaccharides are made up of 4 units. 4 units. As I already told you that disaccharides are very important for our body, and we'll discuss disaccharides, tri and tetrasaccharides later on. And tri and tetrasaccharides, they are transport sugars in the plants, and disaccharides can be sucrose is there, sucrose, and lactose is there, sucrose is there, and maltose is there, which is called malt sugar. And polysaccharides, they are made up of many units. So these are made up of many units. These are made up of many units, and like you can understand, glycogen, we have glycogen, starch, cellulose. So accordingly, now in this slide, you see that we have divided the carbohydrates into 3 categories, and first category that I am talking about now is we'll talk about the first category, which is monosaccharides. Let's look at the I'll take it next slide. So monosaccharides. So as far as the monosaccharides are concerned, monosaccharides, as I already told you that, so they are the sugar. These are the sugars. These are the sugars which are made up of single unit. Okay, note down it. Okay, point number 1. Point number 2 about this is, so these are They cannot be further hydrolyzed. These cannot be further hydrolyzed. Okay, and number third is, depending on functional groups, they can be polyhydroxy aldehydes. That means they contain the group CHO group, or ketones. That means they will be containing C double bond O group. And accordingly, we'll be having them. There are two types, and they are, third, I told you that these are sweet. These are sweet. And number 4, crystalline. They for crystals, they form crystals. Simply write down these form crystals. These form crystals. These are sweet, and these form crystals, colorless crystals. So colorless crystals. So, and these are this is the monosaccharides. They are of two types: polyhydroxyaldehydes and ketones, and they cannot be further hydrolyzed. This is our monosaccharide now. And if we just to see the empirical formula of the monosaccharides is CH2O whole N is their empirical formula. As I already told you that these are hydrates of carbon. One water molecule is distributed to one carbon, one water molecule to one carbon. So they're, as I told you, the hydrates of carbon. So the empirical formula reveals that, so where you can understand CH2O, and we just can write down here there's N, and where N is the number of, and N is the, and then we go to number of carbon atoms. So depending upon this monosaccharides can be divided into two categories on the basis of their functional groups. So I will just mention here, if we see there, if we look at their functional groups, monosaccharides can be divided into two categories. Yes, write down two categories depending upon functional groups. They can be of two types. They can be aldehydes, and there can be our aldehyde group, means just I already show you the aldehyde group is this, and there can be ketones, and they are like this. C double bond O is the ketone group, and we have now two kinds, and accordingly those monosaccharides which are aldehydes, they are called aldoses. So because they end with the suffix -ose is added to, suffix -ose is added to each carbohydrate, each sugar at the end, and aldehydes, so they can be aldoses, and similarly they can be here, they can be ketoses, depending upon the functional groups, aldoses and ketoses. So dear students, let's have a look at depending upon the number of carbon atoms, monosaccharides can be classified on the basis of number of carbon atoms. Monosaccharides are classified into trioses, tetroses, as what is this on the base of number of carbon atoms. Monosaccharides are classified into, depending upon they can have the number of carbon atoms may range from C3 to C7, and it can be C3 to C7. Number of carbon atoms which are present in monosaccharides can be from C3 to C7. So kindly note it. And there is trioses, or where there are 3 carbons, so they're called C3 sugars. C3 sugars, and similarly there are tetroses, which can be called as C4. As I already told you, N is the number of carbon atoms, and there can be now pentoses, where number of carbon atoms are C5. They are called C5 sugars. And hexoses. Hexoses, they contain six carbons, and they're called as 6 carbon sugars. And then there are heptoses. Heptoses are C7 sugars. They contain number of carbons are 7 in case of the heptoses. So let's have a look at one by one, and we'll just put a category here. I'll just draw a line first here. Now in this category, if we just look at trioses and tetroses, so in this, I'll just first mention aldoses, and then I'll just mention here ketosis. So trioses. So aldotrioses which are aldotrioses is a glyceraldehyde. Glyceraldehyde is an aldotriose, whereas dihydroxy acetone is a ketotriose. And similarly you can understand, so number of carbon atoms in both of them are C3, and hydrogens are C6, and O is 3. So this is from their empirical formula. You can just close it. They are called trioses. And examples of the trioses, I'm just telling you, or one of the example of the trioses, aldotriose is a glyceraldehyde, and then another is a ketotriose, which is a here I can write down here number of carbon atoms present. So C3H6O3. So similarly, I'll just like to tetroses are there. There's a triose. Triose is a tetrose, aldotetrose, and erythrose. Erythrose is an aldotetrose, whereas here I just write erythrulose. So that means ketose is the end with the word ulose, dash suffix ulose. And the formula is, you can understand, C4H8 and O4. So I hope you're understanding this is the empirical formula. From empirical formula we are learning. And then the pentoses are there. One pentose is a ribose. This aldopentose, and I'll just like the example of ketopentose here. It is ribulose. Although there are many, I'll just explain separately in the monosaccharides. Ribulose, and the formula is C5H10O5. So these are called as aldopentose and ketopentose. So hexoses, you can understand, C6 sugars. So this is your favorite sugar, glucose, called a blood sugar. Glucose, also known as a blood sugar, and ribulose. There's a fructose is there. Fructose is a ketohexose, and formula will be always C6. So all hexoses are having C6H12O6 category sugars. And then there is C7 sugar is, as far as the C7 sugar is concerned, we have gluheptose, or gluheptose or galactose, 7 sugar. And in case of fructose category, there is, in case of this category, we'll find there is pseudoheptulose. So C2-haptulose is the sugar which is here. And the formula will be always C7, H14, and O7. So these are this is the simple classification of the monosaccharides on the basis of the number of carbon atoms. Again, I would like to just repeat this slide here. So they are divided into trioses, tetroses, pentoses, hexoses, and heptoses. Carbohydrate ends with the suffix "-ose", and depending upon the number of carbon atoms, can be C3, C4, 5, 6, and 3 sugars are called trioses, tetroses are C4, C5 are C6 sugars, pentose, hexose, heptose respectively. And if we take the category wise, the sugars are divided into two categories, aldoses and ketoses, depending upon their functional groups. The trioses are glyceraldehyde, in triose category, the hydroxyacetone, and in tetrose is threose and erythrose, and in category this ketose is erythrulose, and pentose is C5, ribose and ribulose, and hexose, the glucose and fructose, and gluhaptose and galactose, and C2-haptulose. So this is the classification of monosaccharides and their examples. Now, in this next chapter, this is all for the day. We'll be with the part third. In part third, we'll discuss the isomerism in case of these sugars, and the lecture